So the next trend that we have the need to talk about is that technology is playing a larger role in the funeral industry, just as it is everywhere else. Just like we've used our websites and our blogs to communicate with our clients over time, the funeral directors are increasingly using technology to communicate with families and friends of loved ones who have passed away, especially since fewer people are traveling back for services. You maybe can't afford to travel to California if you're in New York because your great uncle passed away. But you do have time to sit and watch that funeral service for an hour if it was broadcast online. And I think that is going to be more prevalent coming up in the next several years, as that technology is going to be even more important. With smartphones becoming, such the rage and really a necessity anymore, you're going to see everything available on there. You've got iPads and all of that other technology going on, that's just going to bring video and audio even more into our lives on an integrated basis. So in addition to a regular online obituary that we're already used to seeing in an online guest book, there's going to be a lot more interaction and a lot more of that memorial broadcasting going on across the country and across the world. So even if someone is, in China and we're in the United States, maybe not China, they're not a good example. Maybe Australia and not in the United States, they'll be able to watch as well. For florists, as we all have seen with traditional services being on the decline, distance often means less flowers. So people think, I can't come. I'm not going to send flowers. I'm going to save the money on that too. I'm just going to send a card, maybe to my aunt at home, and express my sympathies to her that way, or maybe I'll make a donation. There's lots of things taking precedence over flowers that are already out there. So what we need to do is be aware of this and also make sure that we're offering the right alternatives to fresh flowers when the time is appropriate. By and large, fresh flowers, nothing beats them in terms of their impact on a person's mental and emotional health. However, there are times when alternatives are important, including more keepsake type items. In my area, we sell a ton, and I mean a ton, of blanket throws. We sell wind chimes, garden stones, even getting into memory baskets that would include a photo frame, a candle, a journal for someone to write their thoughts in, some potpourri, something that they can basically set up their own little memorial spot in their house, in their room, where they can use it at the service. If they're not having one in a traditional funeral home, perhaps you can provide that item to them that they would be able to use. Not that this is technology related necessarily, but because of technology and more people not coming, you need to be able to provide the right kind of gift items for them whenever they need them. In terms of technology itself, if you haven't already, you need to get involved with listings and ads or sponsorships on the funeral home's websites. Basically, if for no other reason than top of mind awareness. People are going to see your name associated with the funeral home when they're on the funeral home website to look at that online obituary. If they can click and place an order, it'll be easy for them to do. Just the association of you with the funeral home automatically gives you more credibility and trust among those who might not know you from anybody else in that town. So if they are halfway across the world, the fact that you're right there with that funeral home and that funeral director trusts you with their clients automatically gives you a leg up. For instance, one thing coming on the horizon that I was talking with Mark a little bit earlier about, and I wanted to share with y'all in case you don't know, is that Batesville Casket Company is working a deal, if they haven't already completed it, with, I believe, FTD, who will be basically providing florist ordering ability to Batesville and all of Batesville's casket customers. A lot of the people that buy caskets from Batesville also have websites through them. If you don't know that, Batesville has an entire website division, basically. So they're hooking up with FTD to provide online ordering through all those websites automatically. If you can, you possibly need to get your funeral director and see if you can link to them instead of them linking to a company like FTD or Teleflora or ProFlowers or 1-800, any of those big guys. You're going to get the order if they do it, maybe, but you're going to get it at 30% less. And as we know, you need all the profit that you can get. The one other thing you possibly would be able to do in terms of technology, if you can, is try to see if you can get your own affiliate link with them. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But one of the main things that you can do is show your funeral director that you're serious and that you're willing to possibly partner with them in a more serious way than just paying a fee to have the ad on the website. So enough with technology for now. I could go on about that for hours, but enough of that. Back to regular trends in funeral industry. And the next one is green funerals. Just as the rest of the world's currently all about being green and eco-friendly, this also affects the funeral industry. Sometimes it can mean lower cost, but not always. Basically, the green funeral, it can be an economic decision if it's less expensive, but as we see with lots of other areas, people are willing to pay as much or more for eco-friendly or organic products and services. So for the funeral director, a green funeral oftentimes goes hand in hand with cremation because the family doesn't want to have the disturbing of the earth and the embalming fluid and everything else going into the person's body and into the ground. It's not good for our soil and everything like that. Um, Biodegradable caskets are being used more and more, especially for memorial services. We see small gatherings and natural settings. So once again, sort of also tying in with the personalization aspect of the trends. This all goes hand in hand with cremations are on the rise. People perhaps want to spend less money, or if they don't, they at least want to make it more personal for them. So for the funeral directors, this can possibly mean more work or less work, depending on the services that they're able to provide, such as securing the site location for where that service might be. Um, Oftentimes, a green funeral is very quick, as terrible as it sounds, because there is no embalming fluid. You can't have a body staying for days and days and days. It's just not a good thing to do. So they are a little quicker turnaround. You need to be prepared as a florist, and this is where florists come into this trend with the funeral directors. In your stock or readily available to you, I recommend having organic material, having organic containers, biodegradable containers being part of your daily stock. Maybe not tons and tons and tons, but have enough that you'll be able to use this. It's a great marketing ploy. Make sure whenever you're making flower arrangements, you're not always making a one-sided traditional style piece. People are looking for more natural style arrangements, things that look like maybe they were just picked from the wildflower field or something along those lines, or else maybe the person that died was a peony gardener, so maybe a vase of all peonies would be good. These are questions that you need to be asking and things that you need to be thinking about whenever you are working with a funeral director or with a family for a funeral such as this. The other thing that I recommend, and I've heard this being very successful for some florists, is to make sure that you have alternatives such as trees, perennial plants, garden stones, natural elements that can be kept by the family or used by the family, in this case planted by the family if it's a tree or a perennial, that they can almost set up their own little meditation garden or that sort of thing in remembrance of the person that passed away. Keep in mind you may also be asked to provide organic flowers or locally grown flowers and plants. So check into that and see, are they available to you? Do your suppliers carry those? If they don't, can they get them for you? What's the lead time on that? Is it a lot more expensive? Are they relatively the same price? And that's not just in funeral. I think that that's going to be a growing trend perhaps in our daily regular florist environment as well, is that people are still looking for more natural, local, organic product. Um, so keep that in mind as you're going forward. And finally, the last trend in the industry is that there's basically going to be a new face. Traditionally, we've walked into a funeral home and it's men that are running the show. They're families that are running the show. And basically, similar to the florist, there's been a consolidation in the industry. The number of funeral homes is decreasing over the past several years. And this latest statistic that I had pulled from the Funeral Doctors Association website itself, basically it's spelled out right here. The top four, only four publicly traded funeral home operators in the U.S. accounts for 10% of the market share in 2009. That's a lot, considering that still most of the funeral homes are still family run. That is really going to be more scarce coming up in the next several years. So be prepared to be dealing with more of a corporate type of atmosphere as opposed to just the funeral director that his family that you may have known for generations in your neighborhood. The other thing that we see is more women are entering this field. I found this very, very fascinating. And if you think about the natural skill sets that a woman usually possesses, perhaps differently than a man, sometimes better, sometimes for worse. But I think that women tend to be very compassionate. They tend to be great listeners. They tend to be great at organization. They can multitask. They can. They're great at doing events. Those are all really important skills to have as a funeral director. And you're seeing more and more women entering this field. If any of you have watched The Bachelor, you just saw that last week The Bachelorette was dismissed. She was a funeral director. She made it to the top four, top five in the show. So she certainly gave a lot of credence and a lot of public awareness to all of America watching The Bachelor, that women can be funeral directors too. So look for that a little bit more on the horizon. An interesting statistic with this is that 57% of students at mortuary schools right now are female. So coming into the future, you can see more than half of those new funeral directors are going to be women. So be prepared to work with that. So overall, in terms of for florists, expect a more professionally run funeral home than maybe what you would have had in the past. There's going to be a sharper eye on profit. Not to say your funeral directors haven't run an excellent business over time, but these companies are in it for the profit. They're not necessarily always in it for the compassion that they have for their neighbors and their families and their friends. They also need to make money. For that, you need to try to be their partner. They're going to watch every penny. They're looking for profit centers, they're looking for new opportunities, and that's where florists can fill in. Once again, you might want to revisit. Do you have a commission structure in place for your funeral home? If they do the sale for you and send that order over to you via fax, do you give them a commission? Do you pay them that amount? If you don't, you may want to look at that a little bit. So just sort of keep these things in mind, that that partnership is going to be important going forward. Also, especially to keep the communication open, I fully expect with a more corporate atmosphere, you're going to have more turnover. You're not going to have the same funeral director working for one company for their entire working lives. So you can't count on that. You need to keep that communication open with everyone at the funeral home, so that if someone does leave, you're still at the top of their minds in terms of who to contact.